Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Jo Barrett, and I'm coming to you from Chicago. So you'll get to watch the sun start to set here in the middle of your day. And I was saying to Vanessa, and you're going to get to watch my skin tone change completely because every hour in this room, I look like I'm a different shade. So I'm honored to be here. And I think Vanessa and I talked about that we'll leave time for questions if I can at the end. I have never talked about this subject in an hour, so I'm going to be talking fast. You have the slides available to you. And if you can put questions in the chat and I'll look at them later, or Vanessa will go through them so that we can answer any questions. But it's an honor to be here, and it's a true honor to talk about this topic. So I'm just going to jump right in and start sharing with you, if I can figure out how to share. Okay, where is it? Where is it? Oh, there we go. And there's a copy of my book, and I'm not trying to sell books, but if you want to know more about what I'm saying, this is a good way to find it out. So let me start with telling you, this topic is really about, it was so amazing to me when it really is about the first definition of Pono that we heard today in the keynote, which was about resources and assets. And I have been in the field for over 45 years. I live in Chicago, and I was the first Department of Children and Family Service worker for the state of Illinois. So that's the equivalent of any CPS. And so all I've ever done since 1978 is work in child abuse and neglect. And so that was 78. Somewhere in the late 80s, I began to realize that I was not very healthy in terms of spirit and in terms of care. And what I then was doing is at the same time as I was realizing this, I was doing research. And I was doing research across all forms of child welfare and child abuse and neglect and child protective services, and asking clients what was the most helpful of their experiences, whether it was therapeutic or case management. And what, of course, they all said was the healing power of the relationship, right? We all know that no matter what job we do, how we work with clients, it's the relationship, this sacred power that us as professionals, lay people, it's to see who our clients are, to hear who they are, and understand what they need. This was the most important aspect of if they believed they could change. And it was interesting. I also start with proverbs and quotes, and I start my day every day with that. And when I was doing this research, what people were telling us that had experienced interpersonal violence and neglect is that their life was this constant state of getting lost, being overwhelmed, being confused, being traumatized, being abused, and then finding themselves again, being able to say, okay, I have a little hope, and then getting lost, and then finding themselves. And what they talked about was that little pieces of hope that would get them through the traumas. So much came from us, so that we were there recognizing when our clients got lost, when they got emotionally and spiritually and psychologically lost. Who am I? What am I doing? We were there very stably, being able to give them hope. And again, this is all, I go through it fast because it's everything you've heard, particularly so far today, is that us as professionals, a good head and a good heart are a formidable combination. And even though we need skills and we need skills and resources and intelligence and follow protocol, the most important aspect of healing is a good head and a good heart. And that's what we heard over and over and over again. And what I then realized as I was getting this research, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more about it, is that I, in fact, as much as I was a conscientious and I showed up and I was dependable and I followed protocols and I was learning all sorts of unbelievable interventions and strategies, that what I wasn't doing is recognizing that my heart and my mind were rotting. I don't know any other better way to say it, that in fact, I wasn't the kind of human being that our clients needed, even though I had all these skills. And mostly it came from vicarious PTSD and compassion fatigue. But what was the ethical piece that what I want to say is that what I'm going to talk about is recognizing that we are suffering from compassion fatigue or vicarious trauma, and recognizing that we must do something to heal ourselves, not just to be healing and working with our clients. And I would say, if we're all have different ethical organizations or professional organizations, if I came in and I zoomed in at where you work or in your private life and I noticed that you aren't taking care of yourself in a way that is profound, I'd report you. That's how much I think it's an ethical imperative. I would call whoever and say, these person, and I feel like I want to read your names because I can see your names, but then I don't want to get you scared that I am going to call on you. But that's how much I call it an ethical imperative. That based on the research and based on what was happening to me, I realized we could not ethically do our work if we were not emotionally and spiritually fit. And this quote, I love this quote because every day I start, and there'll be some slides that you'll be able to look at later. Each day I notice who I am, what I feel in my body and in my heart and in my brain, and what does my day look like. And if you fail to notice that you're failing to notice, there's little you can do to create change with others. That sacred relationship is dependent on two people. And the shape and the fitness and the place you're in with your heart and your brain are one of them, if not one of the most essential ingredients in helping people heal. So in this research, what people told us basically is that they needed to be held by the professionals, held emotionally, professionally, with an open heart. And what we learned is that they had to believe that we were genuinely a loving and caring moral person, not purpose, and that we had a value system of valuing others. They basically talked about feeling our brains and our hearts. They literally would use words like, I had to know that they knew what they were doing, they meaning all of us, and that basically we were good people. And if we are severely drained and disconnected and dissociative, we can't communicate that, because it's not just with words, it's with essence, and it's with being who we are. So in this research, what the people we interviewed, and I've now listened to over probably 4,000 hours of hearing people talk about what they needed in terms of healing from abuse and neglect and trauma. And the 5 things they told us that they needed was connection, power, feeling valued, learning things, and having hope. Okay. Now, what they told us about connection is what I've already said, is that they had to believe that we were people that had a deep set of value and that we understood their value as human beings and their historical trauma, who they are on a human level, not just what they did, but who they are on a human level. And these connections help them provide a meaningful vision. They needed a vision of things could be better. Okay. And the way and this was one of the most profound, and I've been in the field for over 45 years, only working with abuse and trauma. And when we interviewed people, they weren't telling us about, oh, this protocol or this intervention or this counseling service. What they were telling us was about the human beings they came in connection to. And I'll tell you a funny story. When I got the opportunity, the privilege to interview my very first client ever. And my very first client out of social work school was a Chicago cop who had physically abused his wife, physically abused his son, and sexually abused his daughter. First client, had nothing, no experience, nobody prepared me, nobody. And when I got to interview them, I've interviewed them twice, once 25 years after I had first seen them and once 40 years, and that's such a privilege. It's kind of crazy that I could even do that. But when I interviewed them, when the student came and interviewed them, and then I came later and met them afterwards, and we all hugged and cried. And I said to them, did you realize I had no idea what I was doing? And they said, yeah, that was obvious. It was completely obvious. And I said, why? And they said, because you were always saying, I'll get back to you. I need to talk to my supervisor, or you'd shake your head. And I said, well, why did you keep letting me come into the house? And they went, because we were mandated by the courts and because you were funny. The 2 reasons what they said is because I was funny. And I was like, you mean all you have to do is be funny to help somebody change? But then as they talked about it, they said, our lives were so painful, so scary, so unsafe, that when you would come and we would see and feel some lightness, it helped us change. We looked forward and we trusted you. But to them in their head, it was funny. That was the key element of why I was a good clinician. Okay. And, that's not with every client, because some people don't like my jokes, but what can I say? But for them, it was what mattered. The second piece we learned was the piece about being empowered. When you're being abused and neglected and traumatized, what's happening is that somebody in a position of power is controlling your life. And believe it or not, which I know you'll believe it, that they see us as potential offenders. All our clients do. because we are people in a position of power. And so most of our clients come into our relationship thinking, how's this person going to hurt me? You know about danger, you know about trauma and abuse, and trauma survivors see danger where danger often doesn't even exist. And so, of course, we're not dangerous, and they experience us dangerous. And so how do we, in our relationship with them, help build it where they feel safe? And that's by empowering them, even though we have a place of power. And how we each, I mean, this is an hour workshop. We were going to spend all day together. We would talk about ways to empower your client. But the important piece is the empowerment. The next thing they told us was they had to feel valued and they had to learn skills, and they needed people to help them navigate the system. So they had to feel like what they had to say and who they were and their own resources and creativities were valued and witnessed. They had to be witnessed as competent people. And they had to know that the ways they weren't competent, we valued and we could help them through teaching them. Okay. And then, of course, overarching what they said was we provided hope. So, so I'm talking to you and teaching you like this is what good professional trauma treatment, case management, whatever your professional role is. It's not do this skill now, do this, do this, do this. It's literally who you are. Now, skills is a part of it. That's the knowledge. But who you are is the essence of what heals abuse and neglect and trauma. It's truly the essence. So what happens, however, is that we work in this field and we are constantly bombarded with emotional residue through the stories, through living through the trauma, our own historical trauma, our own trauma of where we're living now, the pain and the abuse and the violation and the trauma that's happening on Maui and what's happening in the other islands with even respect to Maui or in our own historical trauma. And as that happens, and we're working in the context, our own trauma escalates through the vicarious trauma of others, day in and day out, of hearing the stories and witnessing others' pain as well as our own. And we then also have, which is different than vicarious trauma, is compassion fatigue, which is the exhaustion and fatigue that we experience because we're good at what we do. If you all don't have vicarious trauma or compassion fatigue, then you really are a bad clinician. It's an impossible to not have this. It's impossible. Because if you are passionately and giving and skillfully giving of yourself and trying to help others, you are using your own resources. And if they aren't replenished, that's the essence of we then can't do our job. So what we're going for is post-traumatic growth. Okay. So we all have either complex trauma, we have vicarious trauma, we all have compassion fatigue. That we can't even argue. If you, like I said, you tell me you don't, I believe you, I have compassion, but no, the truth is I don't believe you. But what we want is post-traumatic growth, the growth that comes out of the trauma, right? So what I want to share with you really quickly is, and this is like the most brief trauma, but it's important for this because so our clients have both PTSD often and complex developmental trauma. And what happens is if you have PTSD and complex developmental trauma, then it takes very little to trigger you to be in a traumatic stress state. Okay. And a traumatic stress state is these feelings: fear, helplessness, urgency, anxiety, and the urges that come from it, which is fight, which you all heard, fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And the one I really want to talk to you about is fix. Now, you probably, until this second, have never heard of fix as a symptom of traumatic stress or a part of the lower brain, but it is. It's an urge that happens to professionals when they are in a traumatic state to fix the situation in a frantic urge state. Like, I got to fix this. Sorry, I'm turning on a fan. I'm getting very excited. It's getting hot in here. That your urge to fix things, and it's an urge. It's not from a wise mind or an open heart. It's from a lower brain state. And you, when you're with your clients, will go into a traumatic stress state. And your clients are already in a traumatic stress state whenever you see them. And so what happens is, if you're in a traumatic stress state, and so are they, you escalate, get stuck, and nobody can change. Those of you that have your camera on, do you agree? Shake your heads. You hear me? You feel me? You get it? Okay, so this is just another slide that defines traumatic stress. But traumatic stress is what happens to us. Now, when we have traumatic stress or a result of complex developmental trauma, these are the symptoms that are presented to us. This is what we see in people we work with, all of those. None of them are new to you, right? And we start to have these same survival skills, right? Because we are also suffering. So we have mistrust at work and with other people. We have cognitive distortions. We start to numb. We start to dissociate. Any one of these are symptoms, but I also call them survival skills. This is what we do when we are in a stress state as a way to survive. I don't know how many of you know much about, those of you that are, I can see your faces, you can shake your head. How much of you know about neurobiology and the polyvagal state? But what this basically means is that if you see, our clients spend most of their time in the yellow and the red. Okay? And it takes very little to trigger them to go up into that activation. Okay? What happens when we have vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue, we also are on that same bell curve. That because of our exhaustion, because of our trauma, we often bring into the relationships outside at home and inside with our clients anger, rage, irritation, fear, anxiety, so that we are in the yellow with our clients. They're in the yellow, that's where they should be, even in the red. And we have to find a way for ourselves to come down into the green. You're never going to be totally in the green. I like to say we get to that white place, little line. But what we want is for you to be able to know yourself so well and have your own skills of healing, that you'll be able to deactivate yourself. Not only at home with your own kids and your partners and your parents, but also at work. That you'll be able to say, I am activated. I am neurologically aroused. How do I bring myself down? So I hope this is making sense to you. Clients say that what they need is a regulated, open heart and open mind in order to heal. And if we are suffering and activated in our own traumatic stress, we can't be what they need. It's literally an impossibility, which is why I call it an ethical imperative to take care of yourself. This isn't just self-care. I mean, it is self-care, but it's a much more significant. We are the anchor, and unfortunately, we are very rarely ever seen, and most of the time we're underwater. But we keep the ship where it should be. Now, the question is, can we help the ship move, the ship move? Okay. So the concept of mirror neurons is what we're talking about here, is that if you are healing and taking care of yourself, which I will get to, I told you I was talking very fast. If we are taking care of ourselves, then we can send out the mirror neurons to our clients, and they will not only just learn from us, but literally experience the energy. You know, I was with the keynote speaker, I was very taken about talking about healing the past and healing the future by ourselves and where we're at and what we're doing in the present. And that literally happens in an interaction with your client. That if you can be regulated, and if you can have an open heart and an open mind and be present, they literally will exchange positive neurons. Doesn't mean that then one time they have it, it's a repetition. I'll say one more neurobiology and we'll move on. Clients, complex developmental trauma is pretty simply defined as a repetition of abuse and abuse and abuse, trauma and trauma, trauma. And it means we have three parts to our brain, and the bottom part of our brain is staying in this neurotransmitter over and over and over. Fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze, fight, flight, freeze. And when your brain stays in that same place over and over, that's the first place it goes, and that's where it gets stuck. And what we're talking about is helping clients move into all three parts of their brain. And that takes a lot of repetitions, just like it took a lot of repetitions to get them there. But if we aren't in all three parts of our brain, we cannot help them change. Okay, I might come back to this, but I'm very aware of the time. So this is another slide of just what happens to therapists when we're dysregulated, and clinicians and professionals. We might get some of these, we might get all of them. I can tell you I've had every single one. Where I mean, how many of you, again, you can shake your heads and let me know, how many of you have felt like I can never do enough? Right? And chronically feeling like I can never do enough, you can see how it's really tough to do what I'm talking about in terms of the sacred mirror neurons, right? We get hypervigilant, we're diminished in our creativity, we don't have the energy, we don't listen very well, we get angry, we're cynical. All these things just go through chronic exhaustion, numbing. We start using substances to make ourselves feel better. Guilt, fear, all of these happen when you are in a traumatic stress state. And we will get to a traumatic stress state almost every day and many times within the day. Now, it doesn't mean you have to be in the field 40 years, because probably I get into a traumatic stress state less than you do now, because if you looked at my life, you'd say, dear God, all you do is take care of yourself, but I still see 6 or 7 clients a day. I still do trainings. And if you also saw what I did today to get ready for you, to get myself prepared, to absolutely, as we were taught at the beginning, we have to prepare for our journeys. And every day you have a journey that a person out there is dependent on you and is needing you. They do. And when it feels like your job is sucking you dry, right? It is. It's sucking you dry. And we aren't springs. We don't spring eternally. These things don't just heal themselves naturally. We are wells. People come to the well, take from us, and it's up to us to replenish. It has to be us. So, said enough about co-regulation. So your performance, your health, your happiness are grounded on the skillful management of energy. A lot of us say, oh, we're burnt out. We're not good at time management skills. I'm not saying you're not burnt out. I don't know. But most of the time it's not burned out. Most of the time it's vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. And if you're going to be good at your job, healthy in your life, and happy, you've got to manage your energy. Everything we're talking about is energy. The energy exchange between you and your clients, and the energy of the well of you filling up your own. So human beings run on 6 energy domains, just like a car, like anything, any machine runs on 6 energy: emotional, intellectual, physical, sensual, spiritual, and social. That's our energy. And if we don't keep the tank half full, then we are running low on energy. And if we're running low on energy, we can't survive. And we certainly can't help other people who, based on their own trauma and their historical trauma and what they're living through, we can't help give them that meaningful vision of the future if we are depleted. So just so you know, what I mean by sensual energy is touch, seeing the beauty of the world, taking the time to fill up. I mean, you all live in as far as I can tell, as far as I go to Hawaii, I go to Maui every year to work and to replenish. So that, because it is a sacred place, and it's been a sacred place in my family for 3 generations, and that's where I get my sensual and spiritual. And because I work when I'm on Maui, I get a lot of intellectual and emotional. So the point is, we need energy on all these different levels, and no one else is going to give it to us. Let me say one other thing about the energy. Our jobs are unique. My husband is an engineer, And when he works, he doesn't use energy on all 6 levels. And engineers just don't, right? But we use energy on all 6 levels to do our work. All right. And I'll just take it back to that slide so you can see it. And we use, this is where we're very unique. And I want you to have compassion for us all. We use energy, the same energy we use at work is the energy we use at home. Because our jobs are about sacred relationships. And so is our lives at home, with our kikis, with whoever we live with all our elders. Our lives are based on sacred relationships. My husband, when he goes to work, spends a lot of time with machines, right? But we use energy from these 6 domains at home and at work. And so that's why sometimes when you come home from work and somebody says, "Oh, how was your day?" And you're like, the last thing I want to talk about is my day. Or someone says, "Hey, sit down, let's do this, let's do that." And all you want to do is sit in silence. Like, I don't know about you, but oftentimes I felt like, or feel like still, I've used all my words. There's no words left in my brain. But other people in our lives want to keep talking, want to do things. That's because they have reservoir in some of these domains that we don't. The piece about the physical is that what I really want to emphasize is the importance of physical well-being. Knowing what we should eat, knowing how our body responds to food, knowing how our body responds to meditation, to prayer, to exercise. That if this really is a marathon, what we're doing, and if we are not fit, if we are not get enough sleep, get the right nutrition, get the right exercise, we cannot function to the ability that we need to. And when I started working, talking to you today, and I told you about my first, when I started doing this research, I was not sleeping. I was taking things to sleep. Then I had to take things to wake up. I was absolutely abusing caffeine. I literally was having my hair fall out. I was angry. I was resentful. I was in really bad, and was getting physically sick all the time. I was in incredibly bad shape. And the consequences to that was that I hated my work. I wasn't being effective. I was late. I had a lot of issues in my personal life as well as at work. And when I started doing these interviews, I realized my clients, in order to heal, needed me to be healthier. And what happens now when I'm doing this talk is you're probably all sitting there going, "I'm too tired. I don't have time. This is all great for you to say, but this isn't going to work." And that's why I like this cartoon, because I am sharing some things with you that will make your job easier and better when you feel good emotionally and spiritually, when you have a social life, when you are praying, when you are meditating, when you are physically active, when you are taking the time to give yourself the resources so you can give resources to others. So, in order to be successful, you have to be mindful of the effects of your compassion, and you need to understand this concept of energy exchange And you have to understand your need for balance, your true need for balance in your life in order to help other people. So, everything is energy. That's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. This is not philosophy. This is physics. So my question to you that you need to ask yourself, whether it's after this hour with me or later on in the day, is what's the energy you're giving out? And what's the energy you have? How depleted are you? How exhausted? Emotionally, spiritually, physically. What is the energy you feel and you have and that you are communicating and giving to other people? Just another little piece of humor. Again, it's all this concept of I don't have time to do these things. And I hear you. And I really do have compassion because that's how I used to feel, honestly. Yet I do know the more I give to myself, the more I recognize I am lost, I am depleted, and I can give myself in small ways throughout the day with a mindful consciousness of I am replenishing sacred energy that I need in order to do this work in the world. So now I'm going to give you some thoughts, and these next slides again, we'll go through them. What I'm really suggesting is that you do this at home on a regular basis, that you take 5 or 10 minutes. You know, every morning I do this sort of wellness plan that I'm going to share with you. And it's about organizing your day, your entire day, about replenishing yourself. So that doesn't mean you don't see your clients. That doesn't mean that you're not putting your all into your clients. What I'm saying is this formula of energy is that if I spend an inordinate amount of thought on how to feel myself up, I will be more effective at work. I remember when I first started doing this, I spent most of the beginning part of my career doing home visits. And when I first started putting all this together, I realized that my car was a hellhole. It was a pit, my car. I don't know if you could hear me. And that every time I got in my car, believe it or not, now that I figured this out, what I'm sharing with you, it was taking energy from me. It didn't smell good. It got stuff all over it. I'd stop and eat some fast food, which also was depleting. I'd leave the box in the car when I went into the home, all of this stuff. And what I realized is that when I would start my day, I would clean the car out in the morning. And once a week, I gave it a car wash. And even to this day, I just got a car wash yesterday. This is how your brain starts to work. This morning, I got out, left the grocery store, looked at my car, and it was really beautiful. And I went, God, my car looks great. And there was a moment of feeling good. Every time I get in my car, because it really smells good, I have a moment. And I take that moment. I think about what I'm going to listen to in the car. What we're talking about is the way energy works is little bursts of energy, which goes back to that cycle at the beginning. Little bursts of energy accumulate. And most of us just deplete. But we're talking little bursts. as long as you are mindful that this little burst is in service to myself. So what brings you high positive energy? Joy. What brings you joy? What brings you happiness? What gives you still? What gives you peace? What gives you calm? What is it that gives you positive energy in your life? What helps you feel courage? What helps you be flexible? What helps you have faith, to be more creative? And to look at what gives you more negative energy. What kind of things make you more angry, critical, judgmental, irritable, depressed, withdrawn, isolated? There is so much in our world right now that is absolutely filled with negative energy. And we can't get away from it, but we can counterbalance it. And that is the only way to survive, is to have this balance of energy. Recognize what takes it from us and how to replenish it. So what we have to do is create basically a wellness plan where we're building proactive energy, and we need a formula, meaning what is it that gives me energy and how do I integrate that into my absolute daily life? Okay. So in this wellness plan, the overall worksheet is, first you have to identify what are your symptoms of vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. What are the behaviors that you are not proud of, that you are not happy with, that are problematic in your relationships, that are problematic at work? What are the behaviors that in fact you know are a result of vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue? Again, what with work, with people, who are you that you know is coming? Like for me, what behaviors? I wasn't sleeping, I was critical, I was nasty, I was dissociative. A lot of times I just went numb. I ate terrible. I wasn't moving, I wasn't exercising, I didn't socialize. I mean, there were a lot of. And then what's the self-talk that was influencing those behaviors? I have to do this, or my husband's too demanding, or my children are bad, or what were the things that I was saying to myself? Because every time you do one of those behaviors, or you do a negative self-talk, that takes more energy away from you. And clearly, what reactions to others are problematic? When you think something about somebody, or you have an attitude or judgment, those are all symptoms, because it means that we are not opening our heart to the people around us, whether it's clients or friends. I remember one time I had, and this is a true story, I had a friend who wasn't in the field, and during the time I had the worst compassion fatigue, I didn't associate with anybody that wasn't in the field. That probably was a problem. And I had a friend that wasn't in the field, and she called me up one day, and it was at a really bad day, and I didn't want to talk to her, but I answered the phone. She said, "How was your day?" And I said, "It was really bad. I don't want to talk about it. How was yours?" And she said, "Mine was shitty. The cleaners ruined my pants." And I never talked to her again. I just cut her off, because my thought was, that's who you are. I don't want anything to do with you. And that's an extreme reaction. And I became more and more and more socially isolated because of my reactions to other people. So I want you to take an honest look at yourself. What are your symptoms? What are your behaviors, your self-taught that isn't helpful, and your reactions to other people? Then I also want you to take the time to what tasks at work, what tasks in your life that take a lot of energy, you know, computers, emails take an enormous amount of energy. And then every time I look at the box and says I have 4,000 unread emails, I want to just go lock myself in a closet. So those tasks take a lot of energy, right? Certain clients take more energy. Certain supervisees, for those of you that are supervisors, take more energy. Certain aspects of my job take more energy. It's very important that you know what takes energy and what gives you energy. All right? And what lifestyle choices do you make? Looking at your phone before you go to bed at night is a lifestyle choice. Not getting up and at least walking every 10 minutes, for 5 minutes or 10 minutes every couple of hours is a lifestyle choice. What life's drinking too much, not eating well. These are all lifestyle choices. And these choices are using up very precious energy that you don't have extra of. So then what I'd like you to do at some point is make a vision board in your head or on paper or write it out. What kind of person do you really want to be? How do you want to open your heart? You know, I've noticed as I've aged that a lot of my friends, my peers that are my age, and I do think this happens, is they lose their filter and they say all sorts of just obnoxious things. And when I ask them about it, they say, I've been around 70 years. I could just say whatever I want. And I realized I don't want to be that 70-year-old that just says whatever they want. That's not the kind of person I want to be. So what kind of person do you want to be? What kind of professional do you want to be? I want to be kind. I want to be loving. I want to be present. I want to be mindful. Really take a time journaling, whatever. What kind of person do you want to be? And look at your top energy expenditures. What takes the most energy from you? Go back to that other sheet. What tasks, what people, what lifestyle choices are taking? I'll give you another concrete example. White flour and white sugar absolutely deplete me. Now, I'm addicted to it. I crave it probably because I'm addicted to it. But I know that I feel anxious. I feel uncomfortable. I feel tired. I am a different person when I overeat white flour and white sugar. It took me a long time to figure it out, but I figured it out. So I know that. And so in my wellness plan, I really have to think cautiously about when I'm eating that. And what's it mean? And I can't expect to feel good the next day if I have a big pasta dinner. So what are the positive energy replenishers? What makes me feel good when I eat certain things? What are your flowers are positive replenisher? Clean car, smelling things good, being mindful, meditating a few times a day, journaling in the morning, exercising, surrounding myself with humor, finding people that are at my work that I know fill me up, planning my day according to what's going to fill me up when I know that particular staff meeting. I did a lot of consulting in, this is just a fun story, in New Orleans right after Katrina. And what they were talking about is they all were suffering from trauma. And what would happen is they'd have these meetings and they would feel so helpless and hopeless. And when I came and talked about this and said, what can you do after these meetings? And when people are going through their cases, And somebody made a joke and said, we could, and it's New Orleans, we could listen to music and dance and bring instruments and do, I don't know how many of you have ever been to New Orleans or heard about the marching around Mardi Gras time when people march through the streets. And they said, we could do a little march in the office. And when I came back 6 months later, music was literally ringing throughout the greater mental health of New Orleans, because they made the decision after very difficult times, they were going to fill themselves up with fun and humor and each other. So what's taking energy? Who do I want to be? And how can I bring it in? And then the final is making a very specific plan, that a really specific plan of how you're going to do it. And it's a formula, and it might not make sense, but it is what you need to do. So let me throw out an example. This is a daily journal assignment that you could do. There's so many. If you know, I have in my book, I have audio, you know, there's plenty of things that can create energy inside your being and in your brain. But the important piece that I want to talk, you know, that I'm trying to say to you now is this piece of a rhythm. Goes back to that second slide. The rhythm of I'm lost, I'm overwhelmed, I'm depleted, I'm exhausted. What can I do to fill myself up? Small cycle. I'm exhausted, I'm depleted, I'm overwhelmed, I'm dissociative, I have a headache. What can I do to fill myself up? It's a constant throughout the day of the cycle. And one of the things that I suggest is that you start your day by thinking about your day. Right? That I start my week by thinking about my week. I start my day by thinking about my day. I think about my clients, which clients are going to feed me, which ones, if this is going to be a client that fills me up because I enjoy them, I feel good about what I do, then maybe I don't have to do much replenishment after that client. But a client where I feel frustrated and I feel stuck and I don't feel good about myself and I'm doing a lot of self-negative talk about me and them, I see them on my schedule and I make a plan. So what I'm suggesting is that you think of the day that's ahead of you and you look at where in that day will I feel powerless, out of control, disconnected, devalued. Where am I going to get dysregulated? When you're thinking about this, think about where in my day will I get dysregulated with my family? What in my day is going to be, if I'm going to be dysregulated? If I wake up and I realize I only slept 5.5 hours, I'm going to be physically dysregulated. What in my day is going to take away my emotional and spiritual health, my moods? Think of your day in each of those domains, those 6 domains, and in each of those contexts, okay? And then think about your replenishers, the resources that you have, and plan your day based on replenishment for you. Now, I know this might sound like, are you really kidding me? Do this every day? You're nuts. And I'm going to say, I have compassion for you, and I'm not nuts. I do this every day, and I'm in the field for 45 years. I didn't quit. I didn't go and try to find a new job. I didn't abandon my calling. I didn't abandon what was important to me. I didn't abandon myself. Not only did I not abandon the people I work with, but I didn't abandon myself. And so at 70 years old, I don't care to retire. This gives me joy. It gives me joy meeting with all of you. It gives me joy doing my work. You know, I always say to people, so I'm going to retire. So it's either giving to the world and having the world give to me, or pickleball. Like, those are the two options. Maybe mahjong, but I don't know about pickleball. But the point is, this does work. I'm not telling you something that doesn't work. And I'm saying it is an ethical imperative, because to be able to be good at what we do, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to replenish ourselves with energy. It's a repetitive practice. You can't just do it a little bit. You have to do it every day, all day. Okay? But teeny bits. So after today, I want you to take some time, and it's after the whole day, because the whole day is about you preparing yourself and looking at the journey and how can you create this journey, right? Of Pono. But it's about your own resources. I loved that that's where it started today, as well, in order to give to others. So what are you going to do differently for yourself? When are you going to do it? How many times a day? After when? How are you going to do it? What is all your replenishment that gives you positive energy? How often? And who's going to support you? You know, if you go back to your agencies, the people that you, and say, hey, I went to this hour workshop, let me share this. So many of the agencies and the teams I've worked with change a lot of things. They change how they're doing their meetings. They change how they do their lunch rooms. They change how they do their home visits. They work together. If everyone can follow this path of filling ourselves up ethically in order to give, you'd be amazed at the change that will be there. So I will take some questions, but I want you to just keep in your head, only bacteria survive and thrive in a poorly cared for body and soul. No other organisms, nor will you. You will not be able to take care or help anyone else survive or thrive if your body and your soul is not taken care of. So, look at that. Questions? Comments? No, there's a lot of you here, but anybody have any questions? Thank you, Connie.
I'm sorry. Oh,
Yes, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. My stuff isn't really working. So
That's okay.
I couldn't raise my hand or even turn on my camera. Something's wrong. But
Okay, but you're here.
Yes. So I recently took over a program that handles clients' use in the judiciary system. And I'm struggling with connecting not only with the client, but connecting with their parents.
Yeah. And well, let me, do you know what the struggle is? Can you, I mean, like, what would you say the struggle is?
From my perspective, it feels like maybe the parents aren't really like, it's like I don't want to say they don't care, but it's like they don't understand the seriousness maybe their child is in.
And do you think that it's also that they potentially, I don't know, don't trust the system, because you said it's the legal system, right?
It could be, but their child's participation in my program is mandated by the court. I'm not actually part of the court system.
Okay. And so how long are you in relationship with them? How long are they in your program?
Well, for this one, I just started maybe about a month now, and I've been working on different ways of trying to connect with these families because they are, they are in a population in our community that's very vulnerable. And it's on the one hand, I really want to find a way to connect with them on my own. But on the other hand, it's like at this point, I'll have to report that they're in non-compliance.
Right, right. Are you doing home visits?
I'm trying.
Oh, so sometimes they don't let you in?
Oh no, it's not that at all. It's you know, I'm very flexible in my scheduling. It's basically whatever they think will work for them. I'll be there, and they seem really all for it, this and that. And it comes to the date and time of the appointment, and they don't answer their phone. They don't, communicate that they're no longer available or anything like that.
Okay, so let me a couple things. What island are you on?
I'm on Maui.
Oh, you're on Maui. Okay. Well, so one of the things I was going to say is that when I'm in Maui, you try to take my email and maybe we can even set up a time where you and I can talk about it because I know a lot. I have a lot of ideas
Okay,
because
let's see.
I've been where you are. I mean, I've done what you've done. I think the one thing that I can tell you is that, and this, I just did a training at an agency the other day, and they were saying that it was a crisis agency, and they were saying we have all these protocols, and I was like, I get that we have to follow. The piece I want to say to you is that clients that are mandated, where there is these elements of abuse and neglect, and they don't understand the severity, um, it it often will. I just want to say it will often take you a few months to connect. And I know that you might say, but who has a few months? I have to. But if they see that you keep coming and you aren't disappointed in them and you aren't frustrated by them, and that you understand that they're scared. What I want to tell you is, and again, it's kind of off the topic of but I really respect your question. And that's why I said maybe write me and we could talk some other time or even get together somewhere on Maui. But what I want to say to you is keep in your head that they are in a traumatic stress state. So they are in flight from you. Okay? They're either in freeze or they're in flight. So what we want, and this is based on this topic, is we want you to not show or experience that frustration with them. Because when they experience any of your feelings of disconnect, then they shut down even more. Okay? What it usually takes in these situations, and like I said, I've done it for years, it takes repetitions, showing up, understand you aren't there, leaving a little thing of flowers, being present, absolutely repetition of connection after connection. Wow, this is a person that hears me, who wants to be with me, and it might take months. I go back to what I said about the neuroscience. It took thousands and thousands of repetitions for these parents and these kids to close out and be in a trauma state and dissociate into flight. The good news about the brain, it only takes hundreds of repetitions to heal. So that might mean that you have to do 100 times of a repetition of being available, being value, and working on yourself so that you are not communicating your frustration. So that in a way, even though I said it's kind of off topic, it's totally right on topic, is that in order to do our work, we have to be in a really good place to say, I really see and hear and understand these folks. So you can get a hold of me. I'm come to the islands, a couple times a year, and I'm on Maui for all of February. So I'd love to do more specific case consultations with anybody. Look me up, find me. You got emails, you got websites.
Is
And
your contact information on the Holy Pico website?
yeah, I think somebody, right, Shelley? They can find me.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you so much.
otherwise I was going to tell you to call Vanessa because she's got my email.
Okay.
Do you have something? Is somebody waving?
What was the name of your book again?
Who's asking? Who's asking?
Oh, Kathy.
Hi, Kathy. I don't see you. Do I see you? No.
I don't see you.
Okay. My name of my book is Treating Complex. Oh, Kathy Jones.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Kathy. Treating Complex Trauma. What else? Anything else? All right. Well, if you end up having any questions, write me. You can find my email. Love to see you. Love to come to your agencies and visit and talk and explore more about all this or any other kind of trauma treatment when I'm there. And I really enjoyed seeing you, and I hope to see you again. So take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.